Giannis's first message shocked the NBA. Giannis Antetokounmpo was supposed to be celebrating a new beginning in Miami. Instead, his first message as a Heat superstar sounded like a goodbye letter to Milwaukee. And that one emotional video instantly turned a blockbuster trade into one of the most complicated stories in the NBA. The deal was already done. Miami had already landed its franchise-changing star. The Heat had already started dreaming about Giannis running the floor in South Beach, teaming up with Bam Adebayo, and turning a play-in team into a real Eastern Conference threat overnight. On paper, this was supposed to be Pat Riley's biggest win in years. But then Giannis opened his mouth, and the entire conversation changed. He did not begin by talking about banners in Miami. He did not promise domination in the East. He did not send a warning to Boston, New York, or the rest of the league. Instead, he looked back at the city he had just left behind and made it clear that Milwaukee was still living inside him. He called it home. He called it family. He made it sound like even though his jersey had changed, his heart had not fully packed its bags yet. That is what made the moment so explosive. Because this was not an ordinary player switching teams. This was Giannis Antetokounmpo, the man who brought Milwaukee its first championship in 50 years, the two-time MVP, the franchise's all-time icon, suddenly wearing Miami colors while still speaking like a Buck deep down. For Bucks fans, it was painful. Some heard love, some heard regret, some heard a superstar trying to soften the blow after forcing an ending nobody was truly ready for. For Heat fans, it was awkward. They had just given up players, picks, flexibility, and part of their future to bring him in. They wanted fire. They wanted commitment. They wanted their new superstar to make Miami feel like the center of the basketball universe. Instead, the first viral headline was about Milwaukee. And that is where this story becomes bigger than a trade. Because Giannis is not just changing teams. He is walking into a pressure cooker. Miami expects championships. Milwaukee expects respect. The NBA expects drama. And somewhere between loyalty, legacy, money, injuries, and a closing championship window, Giannis now has to prove that leaving home was not a mistake. Because in Miami, love stories do not matter if they do not end with ring. And Giannis knows that better than anyone. So now the question becomes simple. Did Miami just land the missing piece to another championship run, or did they inherit a superstar whose heart is still trapped in Milwaukee? Comment below where you are watching from right now. If you think Giannis will win a championship with the Miami Heat, press 1. If you think Milwaukee will never truly forgive him, press 2. And if you want more NBA drama, trade rumors, and superstar stories like this, subscribe to the channel right now. Milwaukee heard love, Miami heard trouble. The problem with Giannis's goodbye video was not what he said. It was when he said it, because timing changes everything in the NBA. If that message had come weeks later, maybe it would have felt like closure. If it had come before the trade became official, maybe fans would have understood it as one final thank you to the city that raised him. But this video landed right when Miami was trying to celebrate one of the biggest acquisitions in franchise history. And suddenly, the Heat's big moment did not belong completely to the Heat. Milwaukee heard a man speaking from the heart. Miami heard a superstar still emotionally attached to another franchise. And the rest of the NBA heard the beginning of a drama that was never going to stay quiet. For Bucks fans, the reaction was messy. Some people watched the video and remembered everything. The skinny teenager who arrived in 2013, the impossible rise, the MVP seasons, the title run, the block, the 50-point finals masterpiece, the parade, the promises. The way Giannis made Milwaukee feel seen in a league that often treats small markets like temporary stops before stars leave for brighter lights. To those fans, the video mattered. It was not perfect, but it was real. But another group of Bucks fans felt something completely different. They felt betrayed, they remembered the rumors, they remembered the uncertainty. They remembered a year of whispers about whether Giannis still believed in the franchise. They remembered the tension, the losses, the frustration, and the feeling that the relationship had been cracking long before anyone admitted it publicly. So when he called Milwaukee home, some fans asked the obvious question. If this was home, why did you leave? That is the line cutting through the entire story. Love and leaving do not always fit together cleanly. You can appreciate a place and still walk away from it. You can respect a fan base and still decide the championship window is closed. But in sports, fans rarely hear it that way. They do not see a business decision. They see a jersey change. They see a rival. They see the face of their franchise standing somewhere else. And in Miami, the discomfort was just as real. Heat fans wanted a declaration. They wanted Giannis to sound hungry, locked in, ready to turn South Beach into the new center of NBA power. Instead, the first viral clip of his Miami era was not about Miami's future. It was about Milwaukee's past. That does not mean Giannis is not committed. But in the NBA, perception moves faster than truth. One sentence becomes a headline. One emotional pause becomes a theory. One tribute video becomes evidence that maybe this transition will not be as smooth as Miami hoped. And that is dangerous, because Pat Riley did not make this move for nostalgia. He made it for banners. Miami did not sacrifice major assets to become a sentimental chapter in Giannis' life story. They brought him in because they expect him to change the entire ceiling of the franchise immediately. So now every word matters. Every body language clip matters. Every early loss will be judged harder. If Giannis smiles too warmly when he returns to Milwaukee, people will talk. If he looks frustrated in Miami, people will talk. If the Heat starts slow, the question will come fast. Is his heart really in South Beach? That is why this story exploded. Not because Giannis insulted anyone, not because he demanded more power, not because he attacked Milwaukee or ignored Miami. It exploded because he did something more complicated. He told the truth, and sometimes the truth creates more problems than a lie ever could. How Milwaukee lost its untouchable star. For years, the idea of Giannis leaving Milwaukee felt impossible. He was not just the Bucks' best player, he was their identity, their championship, their proof that a small market team could draft a superstar, build around him, and win everything. But after the 2021 title, the story slowly changed. Milwaukee stopped looking like a dynasty and started looking like a team fighting time. The playoff exits came too early, the roster got older, the East got stronger, and Giannis began to see the same problem every superstar eventually sees. Loyalty matters, but winning windows do not stay open forever. That is where the tension began. It was not one explosion, it was a slow build. One disappointing season, one failed playoff run, one injury, one roster move that did not fix enough. Little by little, the relationship started to crack. Giannis still loved Milwaukee, but love was no longer enough to convince him the Bucks could win another championship soon. And once he made it clear he would not commit long-term, Milwaukee had no choice but to listen. That is how the impossible became real. The Bucks did not lose Giannis in one night. They lost him season by season, until the man who once looked untouchable finally became available. The trade that changed everything. Trading Giannis was not just a basketball decision. It was an emotional earthquake. Milwaukee was not moving an ordinary superstar. They were moving the player who gave the city its first championship in 50 years, rewrote the record books, and became the face of the franchise. So the Bucks had to choose carefully. Boston wanted him, Miami wanted him. The league knew that if Giannis hit the market, the entire Eastern Conference could change overnight. The Celtics had a strong offer, but Milwaukee chose Miami's package because it gave them more flexibility for the future. It was not about replacing Giannis immediately. Nobody can truly replace him. It was about giving the franchise a chance to rebuild without being trapped by the past. For Miami, the move was pure Pat Riley. Bold, aggressive, risky, championship-focused. The Heat were no longer just a tough team fighting for respect. They were suddenly a real threat again. Giannis gave them star power, fear, physicality, and a new championship ceiling. But with that came pressure. Miami did not trade for Giannis to be interesting. They traded for him to win. Milwaukee gave up its past. Miami bought a future with no patience attached. Miami got the star, but also the clock. The Heat got Giannis, but they also got a countdown. This is not a 5-year plan. Giannis is entering the part of his career where every season matters. His body has taken years of contact. His game is built on power, speed, and force. That makes him dominant, but it also means Miami has to protect him carefully. The Heat cannot waste time. They need to win now. Giannis gives Miami rim pressure, transition speed, playoff experience, and superstar gravity. But he does not solve every problem by himself. Miami still needs shooting. Miami still needs depth. Miami still needs another reliable creator. And Miami still needs to prove that Giannis and Bam Adebayo can fit together offensively when playoff defenses pack the paint. That is the real challenge. On paper, the Heat look dangerous, but championships are not won on paper. They are won with spacing, health, trust, and role players who do not disappear when the lights get brighter. Miami landed the superstar everyone wanted. Now they have to build the right team around him before the clock runs out. Giannis and Bam could terrify the East. The scariest part of this move starts on defense. Giannis and Bam together could become one of the most dangerous front court pairings in the NBA. Bam can switch, defend guards, protect the paint, and anchor a system. Giannis can cover impossible ground, erase mistakes, block shots, run in transition, and turn defense into instant offense. Together, they give Miami something every playoff team needs. Defensive flexibility against Boston. They can switch against New York. They can match physicality against faster teams. They can run against bigger teams. They can hold the paint. That kind of versatility wins playoff games. Offensively, the fit is more complicated, but the upside is still huge. Giannis gives the Heat a downhill force they have not had in years. He can pressure the rim, draw defenders, and create easier looks for everyone around him. But Miami must keep the floor open. If the spacing collapses, opponents will build a wall in front of Giannis and force the Heat to shoot. That is why coaching, movement, and roster balance will decide everything. If Miami finds the right formula, the East has a serious problem because no team wants to face Giannis and Bam in a 7-game series. The problems Miami still has to fix, but Miami is not a finished product. That is the part Heat fans may not want to hear, but it is the part that matters most. Giannis makes the Heat more dangerous, he raises their ceiling, he changes the way every opponent prepares, he gives Miami a superstar force they did not have before, but one player, even a player like Giannis, does not erase every flaw on the roster, and Miami still has flaws. The biggest one is spacing. In the regular season, talent can cover that up on some nights. Giannis can run through teams. Bam can punish mismatches. The defense can create easy points. The Heat can win ugly. But in the playoffs, spacing becomes a truth serum. Opponents spend 7 games studying every weakness, every lineup, every tendency, every shooter they do not respect. And if the floor gets too crowded, Miami will feel. Teams will build walls against Giannis. They will sit in the paint. They will dare certain players to shoot. They will force Bam and Giannis to operate in tight areas. They will make Miami prove it can punish help defense possession after possession. That is not impossible, but it is difficult. That is why the supporting cast matters so much. Miami needs guards who can shoot, create, and stay playable defensively. They need wings who can space the floor and survive matchups against elite scorers. They need role players who do not shrink when the playoffs slow down. And most importantly, they need enough offensive balance so Giannis does not feel like he is carrying the entire burden again, because that was part of the problem in Milwaukee. When the Bucks were at their best, Giannis had help that fit. Shooting, defense, toughness, veterans who understood their roles, a roster built to amplify his strengths. But when the pieces around him started to decline, the pressure on his body and his decision-making became heavier. Miami cannot repeat that mistake. Then there is the injury concern. Nobody wants to say it too loudly, but everyone is thinking about it. Giannis has played a brutally physical style for years. He attacks the rim with force, he absorbs contact, he covers huge defensive ground. He plays like every possession can be bent through effort and power. That is part of what makes him great, but it is also why Miami has to manage him carefully. The Heat cannot treat every regular season game like Game 7. They need a plan, rest nights, smart rotations, a system that reduces unnecessary collisions, a roster strong enough to survive without asking Giannis to save them every single night, because the only version of this trade that truly matters is the playoff version. Miami did not make this move for December headlines. They made it for May and June. And if Giannis is not healthy, then the entire gamble changes. There is also the question of time. Miami does not have 5 years to figure this out. This is a short window, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 if everything breaks right. But the East is not waiting. Boston will still be dangerous. New York will still be physical. Younger teams will keep improving. Other front offices will keep making moves. So Miami has to solve its problems quickly. That is why Pat Riley's next moves may be just as important as the Giannis trade itself. Landing the superstar is only step 1. Building the correct team around him is the real test. The Heat need shooting. They need depth. They need another reliable creator. They need playoff-proof role players. And they need all of it before the pressure turns into panic. Because the difference between dangerous and championship level is not just star power. It is fit. And right now, Miami has the star. Now they have to prove they can build the fit. The LeBron rumor that could change everything. Then came the rumor that made the entire story even louder. LeBron James. Just when the NBA was still trying to process Giannis in Miami, another possibility started floating over the league. What if the Heat were not finished? What if Pat Riley was not just building around Giannis and Bam? What if Miami was quietly positioning itself for one more massive swing? A LeBron return to South Beach. For Heat fans, that idea does not sound like a rumor. It sounds like history trying to repeat itself. Because Miami has already seen what happens when LeBron walks through that door. They remember the madness, the pressure, the expectations, the villain era, the finals runs, the championships. The way the entire NBA schedule felt different when the Heat became the team everyone either loved, hated, or feared. So when LeBron's name gets connected to Miami, again, people listen. Now imagine the basketball picture. Giannis, Bam, and LeBron on the same roster. 3 powerful forwards, 3 elite basketball minds, 3 players who can pressure the rim, pass, defend, and control the emotional temperature of a game. It would be one of the most fascinating star combinations in recent NBA history, but it would also be complicated. This would not be 2010 LeBron joining Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. This would be an older LeBron joining a team already trying to build around Giannis's prime and Bam's defensive leadership. The fit would require sacrifice, the spacing would need to be carefully managed, the role players would become even more important. Every lineup would need shooting, every possession would need purpose. Still, the upside is impossible to ignore. LeBron would give Miami another decision maker, another late game organizer, and another player who understands what championship pressure really feels like. He would take some creative burden off Giannis. He would give Bam easier looks. He would turn Miami into the biggest story in basketball overnight, and that is exactly why people believe Riley would at least explore it. Riley has never been afraid of big personalities, big money, or big expectations. He is not interested in being respectable. He wants to win. If there is a path to adding another superstar, he will look at it. If there is a way to turn Miami from contender into monster, he will not ignore the phone. But there is a risk. At some point, too many big names can create too many questions. Who spaces the floor? Who defends quick guards? Who closes? Who sacrifices touches? Who takes the blame when things go wrong? The NBA is not won by names alone. It is won by balance, health, timing, trust, and execution. That is why the LeBron rumor is both exciting and dangerous. For Miami, it represents the dream. One more star, one more iconic chapter, one more chance to create a team the entire league has to talk about every single night. For the rest of the East, it represents a warning. If Miami finds a way to add LeBron without destroying the roster, the conference could change instantly. Boston, New York, Cleveland, and every other contender would have to adjust their plans. But for Giannis, it creates a different question. Did he come to Miami to be the unquestioned centerpiece of a new era, or would he welcome another legend walking into the spotlight with him? That question matters, because the Heat are trying to build a championship team, but they also have to build a team Giannis believes in long enough to commit his future. If he feels Miami is aggressive, smart, and serious, that helps. If the roster becomes too messy, too old, or too dependent on headlines, that could create another problem. So the LeBron rumor is not just gossip. It is a test of Miami's ambition. And if Riley really does have one more move hiding in the shadows, the Giannis trade may not be the end of the story. It may only be the beginning. The night Giannis returns to Milwaukee, at some point, Giannis Antetokounmpo will have to walk back into Fiserv Forum wearing a Miami Heat jersey, and that night is going to be emotional in a way no stat sheet can explain. Because Milwaukee is not just another road stop for him. It is where he grew up as a player, became a man, built a family, won MVPs, delivered a championship, and became the face of an entire city. Every corner of that arena will carry a memory. Every banner will remind people of what he gave them. Every fan reaction will reveal how complicated love can become once business gets involved. The tribute video will probably come early, and when it starts, the building will be forced to feel everything at once. The draft night footage, the skinny teenager no one fully understood yet, the early dunks, the first all-star leap, the MVP speeches, the playoff heartbreak, the finals run, the 50-point closeout game, the parade, the smiles, the roar of a city that finally got to call itself champion again. Those memories are not small. They are the kind of memories that survive anger. But then the video will end, and Giannis will still be standing there in a Heat jersey. That is when the emotions could split the building in half. Some fans will stand and cheer because they know what he did can never be erased. Others may boo because they are still hurt by how it ended. Some will clap with tears in their eyes. Some will sit with their arms crossed, refusing to forgive too quickly. Some will remember the championship. Others will remember the trade request, and all of them will be right in their own way. That is what makes this return so powerful. It is not a simple hero's welcome. It is not a clean villain story either. Giannis did not leave Milwaukee as an enemy, but he did leave. He did not destroy the franchise, but his exit forced the franchise to start over. He did not erase the past, but he changed the future. That is a lot for fans to process. For Giannis, the night will test his emotional control. He has played through pressure before, but this kind of pressure is different. This is not just a playoff defense. This is memory. This is guilt. This is gratitude. This is an arena full of people who once screamed his name like he belonged to them forever. And now he belongs to Miami. The Heat will need him focused. They cannot have him overwhelmed by nostalgia. They cannot have him playing too emotional, forcing shots, chasing a perfect moment that may not exist. Miami needs the version of Giannis who can honor the past without being trapped by it. Milwaukee, meanwhile, will be measuring itself too. How does the city say thank you to someone who left? How does a fan base separate appreciation from pain? How does an organization celebrate a legend while trying to build a future without him? Those questions will hang over the entire night, and the game itself will feel like more than a game. Every dunk will sound louder. Every foul will get a reaction. Every smile toward the Bucks bench will become a clip. Every serious expression will become a headline. If Giannis dominates, Miami fans will say the new era has arrived. If Milwaukee wins, Bucks fans will call it justice. That is why this return matters so much. Because sometimes the NBA is not just about who wins the trade. Sometimes it is about who survives the feelings after the trade. And when Giannis steps back onto that floor in Milwaukee, both sides will finally understand that the relationship did not end when the paperwork was signed. It ended in stages, and that night will be the loudest stage of all. The lesson behind the Giannis saga. This story is bigger than basketball. It is about loyalty, ambition, timing, and the painful truth that even great eras eventually end. Giannis can love Milwaukee and still choose Miami. Bucks fans can appreciate him and still feel hurt. Miami can celebrate the trade and still feel pressure. All of those things can be true. For Milwaukee, the lesson is to honor the past, but not live inside it. Giannis gave the Bucks a championship, memories, records, and pride. None of that disappears because he changed jerseys, but now the franchise must build forward with patience and courage. For Miami, the lesson is urgency. Getting Giannis is not the finish line. It is the beginning of pressure. The Heat need shooting, depth, health, and the right system around him. They cannot waste this window. For Giannis, the lesson is legacy. Leaving does not have to mean betrayal, but he must prove that this move was about chasing greatness, not running from responsibility. The peaceful way to see it is simple. Milwaukee gave Giannis a home. Giannis gave Milwaukee a championship. Miami gave him a new challenge. Now, he has to show the basketball world that this next chapter was worth the heartbreak. So tell me what you think. If Giannis will win a title in Miami, press 1. If Milwaukee will win this breakup in the long run, press 2. If LeBron should join Giannis and Bam, press 3. And if you want more NBA drama, superstar trade stories, and deep basketball breakdowns, subscribe, like, and share this video with another real NBA fan.